podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.
PNR.
Hey guys, welcome to another week here on Ring Around The Rosie. I'm Kim Brown, aka Platinum Rose Lady, aka the twit in front of the microphone right now, rabbiting away, welcoming you to yet another wrestling podcast. It is April 26, 2018, as I am recording this day and date. And, obviously, the big enormous thing that everybody is talking about is the big enormous thing that is happening tomorrow in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, the greatest Royal Rumble ever, as the WWE is hyping it up to be, a 50-man battle royal, and all these people are going to be there, and, you know, people we've seen, you know, recently, people we haven't seen for a long time. And there's going to be a casket match with The Undertaker against Rusev, which makes no frigging sense at all, because usually casket matches are for a long-standing feud, and that's the culmination of said, but these guys have never fought before, as far as I know. But I don't write this stuff, because if I wrote it, actually, let's not go there, because I don't actually know how I'd write a wrestling I know how I'd write a promo, but I don't know how I'd write an actual match. I do actually write on the side, just, you know, little dabbles in fiction and stuff here. Fanfiction.net, go look up my stuff. But, I mean, I guess if I actually wrote a wrestling promo, it would be, there'd be a lot, well, let's just say certain people would be wearing a lot less clothes. So there's that. Ta-da! Obviously, the WWE going to Saudi Arabia is, I mean, it is a big deal. It is a big deal, obviously. And the fact that they're making it this big, huge, enormous deal, you know, that's what they do. If there's one thing the WWE knows how to do very, 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 very well, besides put over Triple H, is blow their own horn about certain events. And that's great. I mean, they almost make it seem like it's the first time they've been to Saudi Arabia, which I don't believe it is. It's obviously the first time they've ever had a live pay-per-view from Saudi Arabia, which will be available on the WWE network at 12 noon our time. And I think that's Eastern Standard Time. I'm not sure about everywhere else. Don't quote me on that. I, honest to blog, don't know. But with this news, there are other things that are, you know, obviously the biggest thing is the fact that the country of Saudi Arabia they've got their own government, they've got their own way of doing things, and that's their way, you know, and one of their things that they're doing is they're like, you know, well, we don't want women participating in matches. You know, we don't want to have women wrestlers. And the WWE said, okay. Okay. Now, there was a radio program for a very long time, that was a rather cool little show. It was called The Rest of the Story. And it would tell about people and how you found out things about them that you didn't know before, because that was the rest of the story. And it was hosted by a man named Paul Harvey, and he was a very nice person, very nice man from what I remember, and, you know, well-spoken. And he had a phrase that my husband brought up to me, and has brought up to me, rightly so, when I have said, like, things about other places where, not in a negative way, but just hearing, like, certain other places have traditions that you're like, they do what, where? You know, and I'm sure other places look at America and go, why do they do that? You know, and it's a cultural thing. You know, you hear about the fact that in certain parts of the world, you know, they eat something that you'd be like, no, I'm not eating that. No, thank you. You know, simply because it's something that you would never think of putting in your mouth, like squid or something like that. And my husband said to me that Paul Harvey used to say on his show a lot, we are not of one world. And that stuck with me. And it's true. I mean, that's absolutely true. So when you're watching a show like, one of the Travel Channel shows or something like that, and you see somebody in a part of the world where they eat crickets, like on a daily basis, because that's just something they do, and you're like, oh gosh, I'm going to be sick. But you have to tell yourself, we are not of one world. Just the idea, think about somebody from India who, practices their religion and is very, very into their faith and stuff like that. And they go other places where people eat cows. And, in certain parts of India, cows are sacred. So they come to other places and they have to be like, oh my gosh, people eat cows here. That must be very upsetting for them. It's putting the shoe on the other foot and walking in somebody else's, walking around in somebody else's skin for a little while. It makes you kind of go, okay, well, I do things that other people might find weird, and that kind of a thing. And that's fine. We're all different and everybody's got their own thing. And that's great. The problem is when you look at another country's way of doing things and, you're kind of like, you don't want to say that other country is wrong. Because you kind of feel like, okay, well, that's the way they're doing things. And they're not telling me, well, you have to do things my way in your country. You know what I mean? They're not coming here and saying you have to do things the way we do things back home. But I kind of feel the same way if you're going to go to another country. Obviously, if you go to another country, you have to respect another country's way of doing things. When you're in another country, you have to obey their rules, And for the most part, that's very, that falls under the category of duh. That's something that would make sense, if you're in a country where they don't, they look down on, or they have a problem with women not wearing, headscarves and stuff like that. If you're in that country and you're a woman, wear the damn headscarf. Wear the dang headscarf while you're there. To be respectful. You know what I mean? That's just being respectful. And I understand being respectful. I get that. And when you go to another country, you want to be respectful and you want to respect their rules and traditions and stuff like that. However, when the things that go on in the other country are things that go beyond tradition and respect and get into places where it's not you as an American or even you as a Westerner, it's you as a woman or it's something that just makes you feel uncomfortable and makes you feel wrong, I suppose is the right word, because, the last week and a half or so, there's been a lot of yelling. No, I don't want to say yelling. That's not nice. A lot of people online have brought up, well, wait a minute. Why are they going to Saudi Arabia? Why are they touting they're going to Saudi Arabia? Don't they look at what goes on in Saudi Arabia? So I was kind of like, well, I don't know what goes on in Saudi Arabia, and I'm kind of embarrassed by that, So I went and looked stuff up. And I was kind of like, oh, that's what goes on. Like I said, different country, different laws, different rules, different faiths, and you have to accept that when you're on their soil. But at the same time, there are feelings that me as a wrestling fan feel uncomfortable about supporting and looking at this decision for them to go there and touting, what a big deal it is. I mean, it obviously is a big deal. That part of the world, it's very difficult for Western ideals and Western culture and things like that, things that are part of Western culture, to get a foothold. Because a lot of the places in that part of the world are like, no thanks, we don't want to deal with that stuff. And we have to be like, okay, well then we won't go there, And we can't force them to go. We can't force people in that part of the world to say, well, you have to accept what we're showing. Obviously they can say, no, we're not going to run that. And we have to be like, okay, well, cool. And we'll go somewhere else. But, okay, personal story time. When I was in my teens, my very late teens, early 20s, my father, who at the time worked for an airline, my parents had already split up, and my dad had taken me to lunch, and he was talking to me about his work, and I won't say the airline, and he was saying how happy and proud he was that this airline that he worked for was the first airline that was going to be allowed to be letting their planes fly in and fly out of Beijing, China. And now, in my head, let me put it another way. My heart knew, don't say what you're going to say. My head went, fuck it, say it anyway. And I said it. I said something to the effect of, but Dad, China's, notorious for human rights violations and all these terrible things going on, and, that they do these awful things to their own people. Why would your company want to deal with people who do things like that? And my dad looked at me, and, it wasn't anger, because for a second I was like, oh, fuck, I really blew it. And it wasn't anger. He just kind of looked at me with pity, I guess. Yeah, pity would be a good word. And he kind of shook his head and he said, Kim, you don't understand the way the world works. That has stuck with me for 20 plus years. You don't know the way the world works. That was dad talk for, you live in your own little isolated, world where everybody gets along and everything's perfect. And sometimes, when you're doing business, you have to deal with people you may not find savory. And again, and it's funny because when all of the consternation and stuff started online about the WWE going to Saudi Arabia and the big hoopla about the pay-per-view and the matches and all that, that phrase came roaring back into my head. You don't know how the world works. I I guess I kind of still don't know how the world works, because I'm one of these people that would be very happy if everybody just got along and stopped killing each other and stopped hating each other and stopped acting like, because you're different from me and I'm different from you, we have to be enemies. I mean, that's just me though. I mean, maybe I do live in my own little world. And maybe someday women will be able to perform in Saudi Arabia, for the WWE. Maybe someday the women's revolution that they keep touting the hell out of will actually make it over to Saudi Arabia, to make it to the Middle East. And that would be cool, because I would think that little girls in Saudi Arabia would love to see somebody like Bayley, or somebody like Becky Lynch or Charlotte Flair or somebody like that, or Asuka or Ronda Rousey, or people like that, strong, capable women who are really great athletes, and obviously people that, if I had a little girl, I would definitely want her to look up to some of those ladies and, be like, when I grow up, I want to be like them. I mean, I would also be thrilled if my little girl came to me and said, Mom, if my little girl came to me and said, Mom, when I grow up, I want to be like Princess Leia, I would be like hugging them till they felt like they were going to be squished, because that would probably be the kind of kid I'd have. But, I don't know. I mean, maybe I am in my own little world. I don't know. But I just think that you really can't change, and you're not going to have an Arab Spring over wrestling. It's not, that's not going to happen. As much as we'd like to think that just having women wrestling as part of the card would instantly make people, all of a sudden people, big tidal wave of change in that part of the world, that's not happening. I mean, nobody really believes that's going to happen, but I guess we can dream. I'd really like your opinion on what I was talking about, platinumroselle@yahoo.com, if you want to send that to me. So, moving forward, we're going to get to our Raw and Smackdown report for the week. Raw this week was coming from St. Louis, Missouri. The show began with a beautiful memorial to Bruno Sammartino, with the whole roster of wrestlers and crew and such, including Vince McMahon, standing on the stage, and they rang a 10-bell salute and did a video package talking to other people about Bruno, showing some of his matches, just showing him. And it was really beautiful. It was really moving and just, it was fantastic. I mean, serious kudos to them. We begin the show with Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar coming down to the ring, which I was kind of like, oh, isn't that ironic, don't you think? Brock Lesnar, who couldn't carry Bruno Sammartino's gym bag. You want my honest opinion. And, of course, we have Brock standing there looking monosyllabic, and Paul talking for him and talking and going on and on until, thank you, Lord, Roman Reigns' music starts. And he comes down to the ring and gets in the ring and has a stare down with Brock. And I was like, thank you, Lord, Roman has a mic and doesn't have to snatch it away from Paul. And basically tells Brock he's going to kick his ass in Jeddah. And just drops the mic and walks out. And Brock does absolutely nothing. Because I don't think that, obviously they didn't write him a check backstage for him to do anything, even looking remotely like caring or anything like that. When we come back from commercial, Elias is in the ring. Joy. But before he can get started, Bobby Roode's music starts playing. And we have the first match of the evening, Elias going against Bobby Roode. The match is won by Elias, which I have to admit I was kind of surprised. And then we get Matt Hardy appearing on the screen, talking about how he has been speaking with the Oracle at Delphi. Okay. Seeing as how that's in Greece, I'm pretty sure, if I remember my Greek mythology. Okay. And his new buddy, Bray Wyatt. And this is just freaking me out. I mean, I don't know. I'm like, what? I don't get it. I really don't. I mean, Bray's whole thing is that he brings up the fact that without darkness, you can't have light. I'm like, I don't, okay. Thanks for that physics lesson that we didn't really need at the beginning of the show. And that brings us to our next match, which is the Ascension, Connor and Victor going against Matt and Bray. I'm like, okay, we've got 4 of the weirdest people in the WWE in the ring at the same time. I'm like, girls, you're all pretty. Don't fight. Woof. Match is won by Bray Wyatt and Matt Hardy after Matt does the spike twist of fate on Victor. So, I'm sorry. I know, and I really don't understand it. I mean, I'll be the first to admit it. I know that they're over. I can hear people screaming for Matt and Bray, so I know they're over. I just don't get why they're over. I just don't get it. And Matt Hardy with this, I don't know what the hell accent he's going for, is just scaring the piss out of me. We are then graced, Dr. Evil quotes, graced, by Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, who come down to the ring for the first edition of the Kevin and Sami show. For which their first guest is Kurt Angle. And that's tense. You know, it doesn't exactly go as, it doesn't go over as, it's tense. It's very tense. And, they don't really make friends with Kurt Angle very much. Big surprise there. We cut to the locker room and see Seth Rollins, who is approached by Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel, the former Miz Taraj, and they are trying to suck up to Seth Rollins and say that Bo and Curtis and Seth could be the new Shield. I think I just threw up in my mouth a little bit. Let me just go rinse. I'll be right back. Oh, ugh. I'm sorry. Oh, I don't think Freddy Krueger could come up with a nightmare that worse than that. Seth pretty much tells them to go fuck themselves without actually saying go fuck yourself. The next match is Apollo Crews and Titus O'Neil, who have Dana Brooke in their corner, going against Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler, the people that kicked the shit out of them last week. And surprise, surprise, they win the match. Drew and Dolph win the match by kicking the crap out of Apollo and Titus again. So are they going to call this team the Double Ds or something? If WWE, I'm putting you on notice right now, if you use that, I want to get paid. Just saying. After the match is done, Dolph and Drew have a little time to talk in the ring, apparently. And they talk about how they're like, such badasses and so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. We see Kurt Angle, who's watching what's going on in the ring in his office, and in comes Chad Gable, who's all ready for, opportunity and stuff like that, which for some reason brings in Jinder Mahal to start bitching about how he, lost the U.S. belt, blah, blah. And Jinder, basically being his, usual obnoxious self, which leads to him and Gable getting into a shoving contest, and Kurt saying that they're going to have to settle this whole pissing contest in the ring. And that leads us to our next match of Jinder Mahal and going against Chad Gable. Do I really need to tell you how this ends? Actually, I do, surprisingly enough, because it's Chad Gable who winds up winning. I have to be honest, that one surprised me. In the back, we have Renee Young, who is interviewing the Riot Squad. Yippee. And following that, we look back at what happened earlier on in the show, because apparently the WWE thinks we all have the memories of a goldfish, about the whole thing with Brock and Roman. And then we have to listen to Samoa Joe bloviate about Roman and what he's going to do to him, blah, blah. More sucking up from Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel, now trying to suck up to Finn Balor and trying to form the Baxel Club. I'm really sure throwing up in your mouth twice is really not good for your esophagus, so I need to go take a mint or something. That, needless to say, goes over with Finn just about as well as you think it's going to. We go on to the next match, which happened earlier on. The next match happened because of the whole Kevin and Sami show and them antagonizing Kurt Angle, because it really seems like a really good idea when you show up on a new show to piss off the general manager right out of the gate. That seems like a really good idea. Oh no, wait, it doesn't, because then you wind up in situations like this. The next match, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn going against Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley. I don't even need to tell you guys what happens next. I'm sorry. Oh, man. I'd almost feel bad for Kevin and Sammy, but I don't. Actually, I kind of laughed and... No, I didn't kind of laugh. I really just kind of laughed and pointed. Laughed and pointed quite a lot. Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley won the match. Big surprise there to absolutely nobody. We have a video package from Baron Corbin, and then we have the whole interaction between Baron Corbin and No Way Jose. You know, Corbin's got the whole "grr, I'm a lone wolf and I'm all aggressive and scary and shit," and Jose's whole thing is, "Hey, I'm fun and exciting, and if you want to have a good time, just dance." And, you know, I mean, it works for Lady Gaga, but apparently it doesn't work for Baron Corbin because he puts Jose in a choke breaker, and that's that. Following that, we have a PSA, purely shit action from Alexa Bliss, talking about bullies and basically painting or trying to paint Nia Jax as a bully. You know, Alexa, that was sweet. That was really sweet of you to care so fucking much. I mean, after something like that, after that whole promo, and after having to watch Alexa Bliss talk for more than 2 minutes, which is a minute too long. Actually, it's a minute 59 seconds too long. I'm sorry. I'm like, how many ways can a person actually say, "Shut the fuck up, you bitch"? You know, I was like, I'm thinking to myself, well, I know how to say it in English. I could probably figure out how to say it in Spanish. I could maybe try French. I'm working on learning Klingon, so come back to me in a couple of weeks and see what happens. But until then, I hope Alexa punches a hole through your chest and walks it dry. Following that, we have Finn Balor and Seth Rollins. I've had dreams just like this, only I'm in them with Seth Rollins and Finn Balor. That's a double date. I'm sorry. Finn Balor and Seth Rollins going against Curtis Axel and Bo Dallas, with Balor thankfully ending all of this with the coup de grace for the 3 count. We cut back to Natalya, who is in the locker room with the ladies that she is in a team with, because we are actually having a tag team match with the ladies of the WWE as the main event for the evening, because we're not going to have them in Jeddah. Apparently, that's why we're doing this. I don't know. So we have the main event of the evening: Alexa Bliss, Liv Morgan, Ruby Riott, Sarah Logan, and Mickie James versus Bayley, Sasha Banks, Nia Jax, Ember Moon, and Natalya. Great match all the way around, until we have the end of it, which involves, it basically involves the heels beating on the faces and such, until Ronda Rousey's music starts and she came out to the ring. Ronda's checking on Natalya because they're buddies, and is trying to just assist her because Mickie had kicked her in the back earlier. And then Mickie James decides apparently to take every leave of every sense in her empty little head and attack Ronda Rousey from behind. Yeah, I realize this is dating the living shit out of myself, but does anybody remember the great musician Jim Croce? Jim Croce was an amazing singer and musician back in the day, way back in the day. Fine, I'm old. And he had this amazing song called "You Don't Mess Around with Jim." And the chorus of the song went like this: "You don't tug on Superman's cape, you don't spin into the wind, you don't pull the mask off the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim. You also don't attack Ronda Rousey from behind. Because unless you've killed Ronda Rousey, she's going to turn around and make your life very, very unpleasant." Guess what? Mickie didn't kill Ronda Rousey, and Mickey's life is about to get very, very unpleasant. Ronda got up and gave Mickie the look, the look that Ronda gives people right before she, starts breaking things, that look. She gets into the ring and takes, does a hip lock on Mickie and an arm bar, and that actually, unfortunately, the referee decided, oh no, now I'm going to decide this is a time to call for a disqualification, not when Mickie attacked Ronda first. And the match winds up being won by Mickie James, Alexa Bliss, Ruby Riott, Sarah Logan, and Liv Morgan by disqualification. But now Mickie James is probably on Ronda Rousey's shit list, and that's someplace I really don't think I'd want to be. Just saying. Well, that's because, I like breathing with both lungs and such, but, good on you, Mickie James. You want to make yourself famous? I think you just made yourself famous. Good for you. So, moving on to Tuesday night's SmackDown Live, we are in Louisville, Kentucky, and we get another tribute to the living legend, the former living legend, obviously, but he's the eternal legend, I suppose you could say it that way, the eternal legend, Bruno Sammartino. And we have The Miz. We have the triumphant return of Miz TV to SmackDown. Thrillsville. And we have the whole talk with Miz, talking about himself and talking about how great he is, and so on and so forth, and him talking about the fact that his first guest is supposed to be Daniel Bryan, because Daniel Bryan has made absolutely no bones about the fact that he wants Miz back in the ring so he can kick his ass. And I can't speak for anybody else, but I really want to see Daniel Bryan kick the living shit out of the Miz. But Daniel Bryan does not come down to the ring. Instead, we get Big Cass, Colin Cassady, who is wearing a suit, and Miz is kind of basically doing the whole kind of have you been helped kind of thing. And Colin says that because Miz doesn't have a guest, so he can talk to him. And Colin says no one cares about Daniel Bryan, and, I'm sorry, what? And starts, talking about how he's more important than anybody else because he's taller and so on and so forth. For the whole I'm a big guy so I get to be a dick thing, that worked really well for Goliath, Oh, no, wait, it didn't. So, Colin basically says that he's, going to just kick the ass of anybody who gets in his way, especially Daniel Bryan, and throws the mic and leaves the ring, thankfully. The thing is, we go in the back, and Becky Lynch and Asuka have found Bryan beaten down in the back, and Bryan is being taken to the medical officials, and gee, I wonder what could have happened. You don't really need to be Sherlock fucking Holmes to figure this one out. We come back to the ring and we have to listen to Billie Kay and Peyton Royce talk about how good looking they are, and etc., and so on and so forth. And please, why haven't they invented a universal mute button? They start running down Charlotte. They start running down Asuka. They mock Becky Lynch. And Becky Lynch and Asuka come out and decide they're going to take them on. And amazingly, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce win the match. But it's actually not very amazing because they cheated the shit out of it to win. We have Renee Young, who is outside Shane McMahon's office door, and she's waiting to see if she can get an update on Daniel. The door opens up, and AJ Styles comes out of Shane's office. AJ says that he's in a good mood because he's been granted a match with Shinsuke in 3 days, but he's going to get to fight, Aiden English and Rusev later on, and it's going to be a 6-man match, and AJ says that his partners are going to be too sweet. After commercial, we have a feature about Andrade Almas. Yay. We see the Usos in their locker room, and they are joined by Naomi, who stops in to check on her dearest Jimmy and her brother-in-law Jay. Jimmy asks Naomi not to come out to the ring when they've got a match against the Bludgeon Brothers, and she says that she's not going to promise that, and she's not going to apologize for what happened the week before. She knows that she's going to do what she needs to do, to be with, to protect the people she loves. The next match after that is Eric Rowan, who has Luke Harper in his corner, going against Jimmy Uso, who has Jay Uso in his corner. Naomi does wind up causing a distraction by dancing up on the stage, which manages to distract Harper and Rowan. Surprisingly, you wouldn't think guys like that would notice a pretty girl because they look kind of scary. And that winds up working out well for Jimmy, who winds up winning the match via a 3 count. Following that is the contract signing for the women's match the title match is going to be held for the women's belt at Backlash. And we have Renee Young in the ring. And Carmella, being the women's champion, comes down first. And Carmella starts talking about how we're all disrespecting her and so on and so forth. Well, maybe that's because you're a cheating opportunistic bitch. I could have used another word there, but I'm not going to. And before anybody freaks out, I'm talking about the character, so just chill. When Charlotte comes out, it gets even more hostile. And after Carmella shoots her mouth off once too much, Charlotte slams her face into the table and pushes it onto Carmella. I mean, she could have slammed her face about 12 or 13 more times. I would have been fine with that. In Shinsuke, we have Shinsuke Nakamura's locker room door, and Aiden English comes out of the door. He says that there's not going to be any interviews. We see Jeff Hardy in the back, and then we have another commercial. And we have Jeff Hardy coming out to the ring, but he's stopped because Randy Orton's music starts playing, and Randy Orton comes out to the ring and walks by Jeff like Jeff did to him in the previous week. Jeff doesn't really seem all that pissed because Jeff never really does seem all that pissed. Jeff's, kind of a mellow guy. And if I haven't mentioned it before, Jeff, I know that your brother's gone back to the whole woken Matt Hardy thing and all that, which is fine because it seems to work for him and everybody loves it. Please don't go back to the way you looked in TNA. Please. I like you looking like you're, alive and not like a zombie anymore. I mean, like a literal zombie. You look like you walked off the set of The Walking Dead. You're freaking me out, dude. We get a match with Randy Orton going against Shelton Benjamin. And towards the end of the match, Jeff Hardy winds up getting involved. And who's been sitting out there at ringside, and someone attacks Jeff Hardy, and it turns out that someone with a mask on is Sunil Singh, and an RKO from Orton takes care of him. But all that leaves Shelton Benjamin with an opening to hit pay dirt on Orton, and the winner of the match is Shelton Benjamin. We cut to the back, and we have the New Day in the back. And they have the Book of Booty with them. Okay. And cereal and pancakes. It's nighttime, but dinner, breakfast for dinner, I guess. When Cesaro and Sheamus show up, they're talking at the same time. They're doing that whole thing from The Shining. Come play with us, Danny. That whole thing. It's just, and they're saying that they're going to win the Raw tag belts and they're going to go back to Raw. It just basically, snarks back and forth. And, we cut to AJ Styles, who is in his locker room with Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows. And we get the whole too sweet gesture, and we come back and we have a package, a video montage package, however you want to word it, for Sanity, and they're coming to SmackDown. Thrilling. I'm sorry. Doesn't SmackDown have its quota of really hairy, scary dudes in the Bludgeon Brothers? Now we've got more, unkempt looking nut jobs. Whatever. In the trainer's room, Renee Young is waiting for Daniel Bryan to come out of the trainer's room after he's cleared. Daniel comes out. He's been, wrapped up, and he's got ice on him and stuff like that. And he says that he is going to make Colin Cassady very, very famous because he's going to have a match with him at Backlash. And he basically says that it doesn't matter how big or bad you are. When you're down on the mat and I'm making you tap out like a bitch, you're all the same size. He's got a point. More blah, blah, blah from Samoa Joe about how he's gonna, kick everybody's ass and he's such a badass and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, and you weren't the one. I'm sorry, weren't you the one that Roman Reigns said, get your ass in the ring, and you didn't? Just saying, Bo. Just saying, buddy. Main event time after that with AJ Styles, Carl Anderson, and Luke Gallows taking on Aiden English, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Rusev. Nakamura has new music, more actual lyrics to his music now, so I'm like, all right. We have, with all these people, you cannot have a bad match. It just cannot happen. Nakamura winds up kicking Luke Gallows in the leg, hitting him with a Kinshasa, and winds up getting the pin. After the match is done, AJ attacks Shinsuke, and Shinsuke again hits AJ in the nether regions. Seriously, what is Nakamura's obsession with AJ's dick? I mean, seriously, dude, have you never heard of sending flowers? Crying out loud. I know some people like it rough, but not in public like that, buddy. You're going about flirting the entire wrong way if that's what you're doing. I know it's not what he's doing. Settle down. Nakamura goes to give AJ a Kinshasa, but Carl Anderson jumps in front of AJ and winds up eating a Kinshasa instead. I was like, damn, that's being devoted to your ring brethren. That's crazy. Obviously everything's, everyone's gonna be talking about what happens this week in Saudi Arabia, and it's gonna be really something amazing. I think it's gonna be a great show, obviously, so we're gonna have to see what happens with that. Normally at this time of my show, I like to try and talk about, funny stuff and talk about hyping up the other shows that I'm involved with, and I'm going to do that real quick. Platinum Rose's Garden is my supernatural podcast. We have Subject Cinema, which is TC and my movie podcast. We have Front Row 5 and 10, which is our list show, and TC has a couple of solo shows, 3 actually. Catastrophe Vortex, 3-Minute Weekend, and Tuesday Digidex. And there's also Cavebabble and Comic Grotto from our other members of our podcast family, and we're very proud of them. I want to talk about something real quick at the end of the show, and it's serious, and I really want to talk about this just real quick. On April 20th, it was announced that Tim Bergling passed away. Those of you who are familiar with EDM music and dance music knew him as Avicii. He was a musician, he was a DJ, he was a record producer, he was an amazingly talented person. Some incredible stuff like Hey Brother, Wake Me Up, Waiting for Love, Without You, Sunshine, which he worked on with David Guetta. Avicii died on April 20th. He was 28 years old. And his family released a statement today, an open letter about his death. And they implied that his death may have been caused by, it may have been self-inflicted. They didn't specifically mention it, but they said that he, had a battle and throughout, for a very long time. And I just want to bring this up, and this is coming from my heart as a person, and not just as a wrestling fan, but as a person. If you're someone who is having problems and who is in a really dark place and you're really scared and you're at a point where you don't know what to do, talk to somebody. Please talk to somebody before you do something that's going to hurt you and hurt the people who love you, because somebody loves you. Somebody loves you very, very much, and they don't want you to hurt yourself. Call whoever you can think of and talk to them. You can call the Samaritans. If you feel like you're really that much in danger of self-harm, call the police if you have to, but call somebody and seek help and don't hurt yourself, because that's a decision you can't come back from. You can't, press rewind and fix everything. So if you're hurting, if you're scared, or if you know somebody who's hurting or scared, please reach out, because you're not alone. Nobody's alone. And I wish Tim had known that, because I know there's a lot of people who miss him already, and I just wanted to say that. So I don't mean to bring the show down or anything like that. I'm really sorry. If you have any comments, questions, queries, complaints, Roman Reigns' phone number, anything, sorry, that's being a stalker, and stalking is bad. You can send it to platinumroselle@yahoo.com, put Ring Around the Rosie in the top header little thing there, and I will know that you want me to read it on the air. I hope you guys are enjoying my show. I hope that if you are home tomorrow, don't take off from work, don't skip work, and don't skip school, kids, stay in school, that you get to see the pay-per-view, if that's your choosing. And I hope you enjoy it. And obviously, the other big, huge, important thing coming out this week, Marvel's Avengers Infinity War. Get to the movies and see it, and don't spoil it. Don't spoil it for anybody, because don't be that guy. Seriously, don't be that guy. So this is Kim Brown signing off for another week here on Ring Around the Rosie. I'll check you all out next week. Bye.
Podcasting's choice. From coast to coast, continent to continent, right here 24/7.